TPR.
It still looks pretty good to me, हाँ, because I saw in some videos that
इससे भी ठीक है उनको लिखते हैं सर ये वाली मिल जाएगी तो कोई डिस्काउंट होगा.
yeah. Oh, but now that it's recording, your frames are dropping.
Okay,
And I suppose
ठीक है.
my frames might be dropping on your end. But theoretically, we will assume that end result अच्छा होगा.
हाँ, I think it shouldn't be a problem as long as it gets audio through हम बात करने पे and then I think both locally.
Yeah, I think it's prioritizing that. अच्छा, so is your video just as crisp on your end?
हाँ, yeah, my hasn't changed.
हाँ, तो mine also has not changed on my end. I suppose because it's coming directly from my camera.
Right.
And तुम्हारी वाली थोड़ी drop हुई है. But anyway, this is episode 201. क्या बात है?
You did a little like startled shake before you looked at the camera, which was great.
I realized that there was a purpose to all of this. But Hanji, welcome to episode 201. We're trying out a new platform, Riverside, which is not new globally, but is this the first Pakistani podcast to use Riverside, do you think?
I would be shocked. I mean, I've used something like this before.
Yeah.
Hamnawa पे एक दो recordings की हुई हमने इस पे.
The second. We are the second Pakistani podcast to ever use Riverside, and जितनी हमने भी research किया आपस में, being that one question and answer, that's good enough. तो
Have I told you that basically anybody that claims to be first Pakistani anything, मेरा rule ये है, do not take them seriously. जैसे वो है ना वो laws of headlines जिसमें होता है कि anything that ends with a question, the answer is no.
Right.
तो इसी तरह मेरा anything that claims to be first Pakistani anything, high chance that it is not correct.
So I have thrust the moniker of being first on you. ठीक है? And I am second. But इसका मतलब है based on what Zeerak just said, I am the first. But मैं कह नहीं रहा. ये वही कल परसों जो हम बात कर रहे थे किसी से कि वही usual, we've turned into such uncles. Boys के साथ जब hang out होता है ना, तो eventually the conversation steers towards पाकिस्तान में कितने बुरे हालात हैं. So, या आप कहीं की भी बात कर रहे हो, back of the mind ना, it's like जो एक प्रेशर की एक वो है बार, ठीक है, like a visual, you know, UI में आपके दिमाग के अंदर, और वो बढ़ती जाती है. Time since conversation has started and Pakistan has not been mentioned. तो जितने अरसे आप नहीं करते ना, आपके दिमाग में शोर बढ़ता जाता है, पाकिस्तान में भी देख लो, और some bullshit segue into that situation. तो
Onion की headline थी ना, guitar leans against wall during party, tension mounts.
Right. There's a guitar leaning against, हाँ. But yeah, तो वही हमारा हुआ कि we were talking about how Pakistan एक ज़माने में was on the top, or no, actually not on the top of many Facebook lists. Handsome men, security agency, ये वो सब कुछ. We were always number 2, number 3, second most beautiful capital in the world. And I was like, ये जो करने वाले होंगे, obviously, if it's true, तो फिर there's nothing to talk about. But if it's not true, तो जिसने ये बनाई होगी लिस्ट, उसने अपने दिमाग में क्या सोचा होगा कि मैं इतनी subtle मैं इसके अंदर ये जो change डाल रहा हूँ ना, by not saying it's the first, that makes it X times more believable. So yeah, we're still talking about using Riverside.
High school debates में ना, जब if you had to make up a stats, जब आपको make up a stats क्या होगा मेरे अंग्रेजी को, जब stat बनाना पता कुछ नहीं होता था, तो हमेशा ये करते थे कि उसके आगे एक decimal point जरूर लगाते थे, ताकि लगेगा कि almanac से निकाला है. हालांकि किसको actual stat में पता होगा कि 47.8% लगता है वो उस level की optimization है.
And for some reason, my mind, what a 9 out of 10 dentists recommend. That's all a meme recently. 9 out of 10 is like 9 smiling cats or 1 really unhappy cat. Speaking of cats, my cat is in the room. That's also why this door is slightly open. क्योंकि बेगम साहिबा घर पे नहीं है, और फिर उसको आपको पता है लोग छुरियाँ मारने लगते हैं इनको, or at least that's what it sounds like. अगर दरवाज़ा बंद हो. तो yeah, Hamnawa, we promised that the August playlist के बाद the September playlist would be quicker, and I think the gap in real time as measured is वही I think 3-4 हफ्ते हो गए. because I forgot to schedule it. But playlist आ गई थी.
In our defense, playlist हमने जल्दी निकाल दी थी, but I was traveling and we didn't schedule. So we are recording this later, but the playlist has been out, which is also we have been trying to do to get more feedback. So we'll keep doing that.
Yeah. So the expectation is कि आपने listeners, viewers ने सुन ली होगी सही time पे. Episode जब भी this is also homework.
नहीं सुनी तो आपकी गलती.
Yeah. How do you? Oh my God, is he yelling again? How do you feel about this month's playlist? Not as expensive as they sometimes are.
Not as expensive, but I think maybe higher quality or more varied at least. Yeah, less hip hop, more
less hip hop.
More other.
Is that something that I think we've talked about this a few times, where people have complained sometimes that there seems to be too much hip hop, and in some playlists there is a large percentage of hip hop, which is a very growing genre in Pakistan, has been for the past few years. And we've talked about the decisions that you have to take while creating a playlist. Do sometimes those decisions involve नहीं यार इस दफा थोड़ा hip hop कम कर लेते हैं बहुत
Not
feature
really.
हो रहा है.
I think it's very song by song. मतलब जो आ जाते हैं उसके बाद like does this work, does this not? It's possible that like if one playlist has had a lot of hip hop, then ठीक है थोड़ा like maybe I'm not as interested if there's a barrage of releases, but usually I'm not putting together things by genre, except for कि अगर बिल्कुल ही समझो एक चीज का या एक आर्टिस्ट की मोनोपोली से आगे, then you're like okay maybe I should actively go out looking for some others. So if there's like 50 songs in my queue, maybe I will go look for 5 or 10 that are noticeably different.
Do you have to schedule listening?
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so now I'm going to go through my songs. Great, right. It's great. Turn your hobby into a job. Yeah.
वो हो चुका है. I'm a pro.
Yeah. But acha. Okay. And because I was wondering, because of since you are still the only person doing this side of the job, और गाने इतने सारे आ रहे हैं, we've talked about there perhaps being too many songs, too many releases. Schedule करके करना पड़ता होगा कि भाई अच्छा now it's my music listening time. Well, this is a great gateway for you to justify becoming an audiophile. Because वो मैं देखता रहता हूँ equipment, things to buy. And I'm like, yeah, मैं तो सुनता ही नहीं था. But
can you tell the difference?
You should do it.
Because I don't think I can.
I can tell the difference between shit and good. But good के अंदर जो 8,000 grades है ना, वो फिर I think maybe
gold cables वो कोडिंग में कर सकता है.
Yeah.
I can tell between like laptop speakers or like Sonos पड़ा हो कहीं. I can tell the difference. But for me, I think the other hard bit is that the amount of work required to make the good setup work has never been worth it. तो मैं कभी पहुंचा ही नहीं वहाँ तक. So headphones is usually where I'm stuck. Like I don't even think I listen to on speakers very much. So ये AirPods तक हो जाए उससे ऊपर मैं कम ही जाता हूँ. I think
you should get a Bluetooth speaker just to see कैसे, because it does sound. What I do notice a lot is that things sound very different from speaker to speaker, headphone to speaker, headphone to headphone. Every device is very different. So perhaps there is value in this.
Maybe. I think Bluetooth speaker is probably a good idea. Yeah, वो जो sound bar होते हैं TV के नीचे. Something of that sort feels worth it.
Yeah, वरना I mean Sennheiser के आते हैं $6,000 के headphones ले लो. They come with a box and box में tubes निकलते हैं. A lot of stuff happens. I don't know.
You got it. So over ear, I could never make work because for me, वो ऐनक फंस जाती थी. Does that bother you at all?
I luckily have an enormous head. तो उसका चक्कर ही हो.
You should get that on a t-shirt.
Yeah. Most headphones for me have a problem where they start to get uncomfortable. वो हैं Audio Technica के एक headphones हैं M50 something, which are great. MKBHD ने कहा तो मैंने कहा बस ठीक है आपने कह दिया हमने मान लिया. They sound great, everything's good, but they start to get tight. So these headphones I found are quite flexible, loose, lightweight type, and the ear cups are also big. So they are not pressing in on the ear. They're like around, like there's still a centimeter of space around my ear, which means that they're not pressing on the enak. But
got it.
Yeah.
देखने पड़ेंगे कुछ. नहीं, I think ये earphone noise cancelling earphones for me, like for planes, उसके बाद से that's been a game changer.
I have recently got noise cancelling earbuds because my सस्ते बेचारे Anchor earbuds died after many years of use. तो मैंने नथिंग के लिए नथिंग के ईयर टूज मैंने ले लिए और माई फर्स्ट एवर नॉइज कैंसलिंग एक्सपीरियंस. और अब मैं बस हर जगह माउंट करूँ जैसे ही बस मैं बोलना शुरू करती है ना.
मैं तो सड़क पे चलते हुए नॉइज कैंसलिंग कर लेता हूँ. हवा हल्की सी खत्म.
काश मैं सिलेक्टिवली बहरा होता इज व्हाट वी आर सेइंग. आई वांट ट्यूनेबल डिसेबिलिटी कि भाई ये सब नहीं सुनना मुझे. But,
it's amazing with these earbuds also that by the time we get old, they will serve so many of the functions of hearing aids.
Yes, of course.
Because of how good they've gotten. Sirf approvals nahi mili inko, but you can put an audiogram up to it. So it's actually good news for
just like
bad habits.
watches doing ECGs almost. But yeah, khair, chale, let's talk about music as well, which is what this show is for. But send us questions about anything we might have discussed so far as well. A few songs I picked out from this. Reading my commentary on these songs, 4 गाने मैंने निकाले and 2 of them sound like complaints, the sentences that I've put in, and 2 of them are तारीफें. So let's start with, and they're also like alternate order में. So let's start with the तारीफ वाला, which is Asal G. मैंने कहा यार ये सीधे मौत, great, some newcomer that Zeerak has picked out, and वेरी फन डिलीवरी. और यार तो बड़ा मतलब एक्सपीरियंस प्रोफेशनल टाइप बंदा लग रहा है डिस्पाइट बीइंग सो न्यू. आज मैं जाके खोल लिया ना उसकी प्रोफाइल का, देख तो लेते हैं कौन है. So this person is not a person, एक तो it's a duo and millions of listens in India, क्योंकि ये इंडिया से हैं और वहाँ ये खासे मशहूर हैं ये दोनों. तो what is this? How did this collab come about?
What did you refer to them as in the text you sent me?
Straight death.
Straight death.
Straight death.
I appreciated that quite a bit.
Yeah.
I think I don't know that much more about them than you, but their appearance in Pakistani hip hop or in hip hop with Pakistani artists has increased. Umar or now Faris is doing more songs with Indian rappers. Ab isme Talal bhi, I think. So I think it's interesting from the standpoint of how many big names from both sides of the border are on it. And especially in this environment, to be able to pull something like this off, and basically there's no way of stopping it. It's kind of notable for that reason. और इसमें ये भी है कि पाकिस्तान में बहुत सीधे मौत फैंस हैं और इंडिया में बहुत फारिस फैंस हैं. Faris did another song a little while ago जिसमें the other rapper just kept referring to him as like Faris Bhai. And I think it was in the song also we talked about it. So I think just the level of stardom that artists have on both sides of the border is kind of amazing. और उसमें, and that they can't access it any other way. So anything like this that has big enough names or is hit enough song makes its way onto our radar. Aleem ka bhi ye situation hai na, which is like imagine Aleem performing in India. It would be a huge deal. In fact, bigger probably than it would be in Pakistan.
Sure.
So for me, it's really kind of notable for that reason. Or most people, I think, will find that there's probably more practitioners of, in very obtuse terms, high quality hip hop in India than in Pakistan. Just I think wahan pe it's a longer tradition, it's a larger country, production more quality venues, often tends to be a little bit better, more venues. So I think you're more likely to run into like really high quality rappers. Like there's probably more of them in India than there are in Pakistan. उसमें वो गली बॉय की सारी इन्फ्लुएंस जो पाकिस्तान में थी वहाँ भी होगी, but you know, in a more direct way. So I think that it also elevates the Pakistani hip hop industry to have the option to do this sort of work.
Perhaps also because हमने ये तो देखा है ना कि in this short time of like the past 4 or 5 years, there have been a lot of people coming out, but they seem to be so locally influenced that it starts to channel their own sound as well in like a very localized form. हमने Karachi rap sound की बात की है in previous episodes. If that could just be a lack of available influences, perhaps, right? I mean, it could just be a conscious effort कि भाई we're going to represent our sound and we relate to whatever. But it could also be a limitation of established super artists in Pakistan जो कि 5 साल पहले बहुत कम थे hip hop में. whereas अगर आपका इंडिया एक्सेस भी खुला हो तो then you might have like अगर पाकिस्तान में 3-4 थे तो इंडिया में शायद उस वक्त 8-10 होंगे. Like ये नेजी वगैरह तो they've been around like 10-12 सालों से from the days of SoundCloud and stuff. So yeah, and this song I also really एक तो I liked these Seedhe Maut duo, and also I was thinking, I don't know why, there was a new song out by Timbaland, and Timbaland की एक बड़ी बात थी कि पहले ज़माने में आपको प्रोड्यूसर के पास जाना पड़ता था. प्रोड्यूसर की बड़ी वैल्यू होती थी बिकॉज प्रोड्यूसर्स अपने ना बीट्स बनाते थे, ट्रैक्स बनाते थे. It was like a specialized thing and you had to find good people. This was like, टेक्नोलॉजी से पहले ज़माना कितना अच्छा था टाइप बात. But then also, okay, now that everyone's on the internet, अब तो कोई भी random beat बना के डाल दे and कोई भी खरीद ले, तो it's sort of like वही widening the base, diluting the average वाली बात. And इस song में I really did appreciate Talal का, like the production that he's put in, because I do feel in many of the songs वही जितना volume आ रहा है, not every song can be like a unique musical production as well. And Talal obviously being like obviously a super pro, इतने 10-12 साल से Talal भी कर ही रहा है. I really did appreciate his production in this song as well. There's like a very hook-ish beat, the bass line that's going through the whole song, and it fits with both Faris and Seedhe Maut. तो ये मुझे मैंने कहा था कि जब हम बात करेंगे तो I must represent कि मेरे दोस्त Timbaland ने क्या कहा था, and then how that affects मेरा दोस्त Talal. But yeah, how do you feel about production? We have a few people. We have Umair, we've talked about, there's Super Duper Sultan, and Talal. Abdullah, हाँ चलो Abdullah तो हाँ, I don't obviously maybe think of him in the hip hop sense. Which Abdullah are you talking about? Siddiqui or Kusumbi?
Siddiqui but Kusumbi भी हाँ, वो दोनों.
Yeah.
Then there is Shamoon, who I mean only produces himself, but is a producer nonetheless.
Yeah.
There is ye Hanan, who produces all of Khaki's songs. There's also a few others. I think there's Chill Bazaar. Chill Bazaar, I don't know if they would qualify as like a producer or classify themselves as such, because I think they do their own music. They do a lot of work with Chuktai or Phir और कौन बच जाते हैं. There's a few others probably whose names I'm missing.
I think this is another idea that we could maybe focus on in like a अगर हम कभी episode करें not around a playlist, जैसे we were like drama OSTs through the ages or whatever. Producer highlights, like go on and like big producers and go through their music specifically. Yeah. But
I like that idea. Malik.
है ना?
Malik is another one.
Malik. हाँ. Because it's not as flashy a role, I suppose, by design in a song. So yeah, but like it's importance wise, perhaps even as much as important, or like a shit producer can really ruin a song. जितने भी आपका rap अच्छा flow, अच्छा lyrics, अच्छे whatever, अगर आपका music ही बेकार है, तो you're losing out on people. But like a great producer can push music way higher and work with you. So I think बस क्योंकि आप गा नहीं रहे, आप वीडियो में आ नहीं रहे, खैर Talal is always in his videos, तो हो सकता है you don't get that attention, right? But yeah, I think this might be interesting.
A couple other comments about this song. One, I think Pakistan, if you talk to a bunch of artists, and I don't just mean in music but also in other fields, there's this sense that this market is behind other global markets.
I have this idea and I thought about talking about this before we start. So, Hanji, please continue.
I will give you credit. And that artists have to hold themselves back to cater to the local market. There is this sort of underlying notion of progress in it. यानी कि ये लोग थोड़े ज़्यादा इनको पता होता तो maybe they would have found some other
the audience
appreciated audience. Like if the audience was more developed, they would have appreciated different tastes. But even if you look at it not from the lens of progress, but also from the lens of interests, I think it is clear that a lot of the artistic community, at least that we are in touch with, the English medium artistic community, they have Western influences. And in fact, they are bleeding off of and learning from these Western influences and moving forward. Whereas much of their audience is probably not as attuned as they are to that part of the world's creative process by design, right? वो ये कि वो professionally उनको देखते हैं, और so they are almost good enough to make that kind of music, but then have to cater to an audience that is not thinking that same way. So I think that also comes through when you work with international people with a song that is meant to be released internationally, because I think people let themselves go a little bit.
तो हाँ तो फिर what are you saying that you agree with this theoretically कि हो सकता है that people who might be international level with national releases might be pulling themselves back कि ये ना हो कि अवाम को समझ ही ना आए, अवाम who might not be as exposed as them?
I think it's fact that they are doing it. I think you can debate the rationale, which is like, is it just कि audience इतनी पढ़ी लिखी नहीं है, या or is it just that they have different tastes? You know, there's two ways of looking at the same thing. But I think as a fact, people will be different on international recordings than they would be on things catered to a Pakistani audience. And you can get this from the sense of if they're doing a commercial project, it will be different than if they're doing something like this. And I think working with Indian artists gives them the room a little bit to cater to a larger audience that they feel share some of the same sensibilities that they do. So I think you get to see a little bit of that.
क्योंकि I was thinking of exactly आज मैं जब ये रिविजन कर रहा था ना टेस्ट से पहले, तो Shae Gill वाला जो गाना that I've put here, what is the name? Mera Sawera, I think. मैंने ये गाना फिर से सुना आज, and I was like, bro, ये गाना अगर 10 साल पहले आता तो would it fit in exactly? अगर ये गाना 15 साल पहले आता तो would, like, it has exactly the same, I suppose, chord structure, melodic progressions, ये वो whatever that was happening then. तो फिर मैं एक्सपायर्ड में चला गया कि इसका क्या मतलब है, क्या पाकिस्तानी म्यूजिक प्रोग्रेस नहीं कर रहा है, क्या पाकिस्तानी लोगों को पता नहीं है. बट देन आई वाज लाइक अच्छा नहीं, ओवरसीज भी नहीं बनना. तो इज दिस बिकॉज वी हैव डिफरेंट टेस्ट, बाहर कैसा होता है? बिकॉज इट्स लाइक अगर वी कंसिडर वेस्टर्न पॉप म्यूजिक टू बी लाइक आवर रेफरेंस पॉइंट, ठीक है, तो आई थिंक वो इतनी बड़ी मार्केट है with so much perhaps money in it that the incentive to innovate is also manufactured perhaps. Like, it's not just that people are artistically looking for new avenues, it's that there is a money incentive to find the new thing, the next thing, to stand out from like this huge crowd. And then when things do change, it's not like पिछले genres die, okay बस अब ये नहीं होगा. They still exist, but they get, वो अपनी साइड पे होते हैं कि उनकी एक अपनी नीश ऑडियंस बन जाती है. लाइक यू नो, रॉक इज डेड, रॉक इज, अमेरिका में फुल रॉक कॉन्सर्ट्स भी हो रहे हैं, सब कुछ हो रहा है. इट्स जस्ट नॉट द मोस्ट मेन स्ट्रीम थिंग. गैंगस्टर रैप था एक ज़माने में, अब हिप हॉप इज एवरीवेयर, बट गैंगस्टर रैप तो आपको सुनने को ही नहीं मिलता. गैंगस्टर रैप तो ख़त्म ही हो गया. इट्स हैपनिंग इन लाइक स्मॉलर पॉकेट, इट्स स्टिल हैपनिंग, इट्स जस्ट नॉट इन द मेन स्ट्रीम. तो हाउ डज दैट कम बैक टू पाकिस्तान? पाकिस्तान में देयर वॉज, I started to think maybe इसके Pakistan में there's a stronger like traditional sound that perhaps we, अब फिर मैं फंस गया ना मैं कि भाई देखो 90s तक I remember के लोग नैयर अनूर, टीना सानी वगैरह सब सुन रहे थे, which is called the semi-classical. But now I feel in the 2000s after the Musharraf music revolution, आम आवाम में that's gone. That's not on TV, that's not anywhere at all. ठीक है, तो now they have to find something new, which is बाहर की music. But I feel कि जो push हुआ था in that early 2000s kind of phase, for a long time that just stayed as कि बस हमने यहाँ तक अब innovate कर लिया और अब हम यही करते रहेंगे until ये new generation of the past 4-5 years. तो I'm still trying to work out how I feel about all of this. लेकिन ये वाली बात मुझे आज ही आई थी कि भाई, are people just, you know, is it like stagnation, or is stagnation too judgy a word?
I think
How do you feel about this?
all the trends you figured out are fair. I think it's harsh to call it stagnation.
Yeah.
क्योंकि Seattle में Pearl Jam बजाता है ना, शहर बंद हो जाता है. Like, it's not that it is not in the, it's just that they're releasing, it's not in the mainstream, it's they are releasing less music. It is becoming more of a probably less relevant to younger people but more relevant to older folks. लेकिन Bob Dylan अभी भी tour कर रहा है. Beatles clones like Tame Impala is still doing his Beatles sound, right? अभी तक. So it's not that it goes away. I think perhaps we have a smaller market, smaller number of professionals, so we see these trends in a more stark way. But also there is a stronger aesthetic affinity to certain things in a very kind of pride and craft sense. So ये उर्दू में नजर आता है बहुत, ये नस्तली के उससे ना, राइट, सेम थिंग, विच इज कि हमें उधर अपनी एक फॉन्ट स्टाइल से इतना लगाव था कि हमने कहा और कुछ होगा ही नहीं, this is the correct way of doing things. And I think this shows in musical trends also, where this certain classical inspired style of singing is considered to be in a way the correct style of singing. Like that is the mark of a really qualified and
good
high craft singer. Good, took me so long to come up with that word. It's the mark of a good singer that deserves praise. तो नुसरत का भी यही था ना, like the way that he elevated Qawwali was inspiring classical into it. So एक है, I think there's a sort of moralism या correctness argument that is imposed, और वो I think पाकिस्तान में होता है कि we have these like very strong aesthetic preferences, which I don't think is a good or bad thing. It's just the way things are.
Just the way it is,
which I think makes this sort of melody and this sort of singing kind of evergreen. I think what you are feeling also with Shae's song is Anurul does similar things. Right? Anurul ka singing style bhi similar hai, but you don't feel that way with her songs, because that is put on top of a much more modern beat in a way, whereas this was not. And I think that's a choice. It's probably catering to different audiences, but I don't think it has anything to do with the singing style. I think the overall package is probably much more likely to be able to fit into any decade without you being able to identify which one. So I think that's part of it. And I think one other angle that is worth discussing is that female singers that become really big get used for every genre and end up having to, I think, fit a much more limited bucket of things that they can experiment with. I think to come bahut hote hain. It's a theory of mine. I don't know how correct it is. I was debating whether it was correct or not. But just say for a while you saw Aima in every big commercial anthem, right? Like she was the one person that was showing up. But it's not that there was one male singer showing up everywhere, but she was showing up everywhere. Right now, Shae is sort of
the person,
one of the most well-known after Basuri and then the PSL anthem, right? So she's kind of well-known as the kind of female singer that you want to pull in everywhere. And I think that can create an incentive to not push too far. In terms
incentive
of
for Shae internally. Shae would feel that perhaps
Shae or producers even, right? Like which is
can keep her accessible.
Can we take this voice that is so well known and make it niche?
Right.
That is a hard thing to do.
Right.
And maybe not even the correct thing to do.
Right.
Whereas I think artists that are less well known have more reason and perhaps more desire to try crazier things.
Stand out.
So for me, like I don't mean this even I'm not even passing a value judgment. I'm just saying that this is just the nature of how these things will work.
I think what we are saying is कि value judgment नहीं pass करना चाहिए, because there's so many things going into it. I think because वो progress वाली बात है ना, I was like अच्छा why am I thinking कि western में उसमें ऐसे होता है तो वो तो सही होना चाहिए. I think because we keep doing that, Pakistan तो ऐसे पीछे रह गया, दुनिया ऐसे आ गया. I think that's sort of bleeding into it, because when you look at like Arabic music across the Arab world, it sounds so similar to 50 साल पहले कैसा म्यूजिक था, and they're fine with it, right? उनके यहाँ तो कोई it's not like हाँ भाई हम पीछे रह गए. They're like so into, even like young बच्चे I go to a shisha place, वहाँ Arabic गाने पुराने throughout the ages चलते हैं, and Arab people across age demographics are into it. तो I'm like अच्छा ठीक है, मतलब you know ये भी एक चीज़ है, like they उनका होगा rap शैप rock shop भी होगा, but there's this Arabic music, very classical adjacent vocals, all of that is fine. तो मुझे क्यों मौत आ रही है?
Seedhe Maut, I think so, but also this is such a great song. Like the melody is so catchy. Like the moment you hear the first verse, you are like, I know the second verse in like a great way. It's very familiar. You can sing it. You can attach it to many different points. You felt songs like this before. You felt emotions like this before. And her singing is great. Right? Like there's a reason that she made it so big on Instagram before she was on coke and doing her own music.
मैं रिजवान जो करता है ना तस्वीरें, पोर्ट्रेट सीरीज, वो कैप्टिव ऑटोनॉमी के नाम से, तो उसमें एक there was some मेला in Lahore, ठीक है, and वहाँ उनको मिली एक Shae Gill, ठीक है, who said this is before everything. She's like हाँ you know I'm very shy or very introverted, तो मैंने अब क्या किया है कि मैंने अपने आप को I think I pushed myself into like some theater situation or a play situation just because, I want to get out of my shell or ye wo. And 3 साल बाद पसूड़ी आ गया. We're like, what happened? ये क्या हुआ? कहाँ से कहाँ चली गई? But yeah, so खैर big fan. But मैं ये सोच रहा था कि यार I was thinking like it really brought in mind early Nescafe basement कि ये गाना वहाँ directly fit हो जाएगा.
For
Without
me, it was
much
also
changes.
like if you imagine like a female singer being pulled onto like an early Noori song,
Sure.
it would fit, right?
Yeah.
For me, there is a kind of reminiscence of that age also, but you're right, which is that you could put it into any decade and it would remain fashionable and evergreen, which is, I think, great. That she is hitting on this so repeatedly and easily. I mean, easily is the bad word, but that she's doing this in such a repeatable and high quality fashion, like really kind of speaks to her.
I think it's also sort of this, and when I was talking to wo Karakaram wale boys, they said कि हमारा favorite band is Linkin Park. And in my mind, I was like, हाँ ठीक है, whatever, but like you are too young for that to be your favorite band. ठीक है, because they came out like early 2000s जब मैं बच्चा था, and तुम लोग तो मुझसे 10 साल तो छोटे हो. So how is that still your favorite band? I think जो पाकिस्तान का वो जो 2005 to 2012 वाला music period था, because Shae is also very young compared to us and me especially. So that it was influential on her as well. Sort of also talks about how impactful that period was overall to the Pakistani music sensibility and sound and everything. But khair.
One sidebar. Say the name of this band again that you just mentioned.
Karakaram?
That I am noting a victory because that is how I used to say their name. But I have been
How do you say it?
told
Karakoram?
off. No, I say Karakoram.
Yeah.
And I have been told off that this is a diaspora way of saying it. Karakoram hota hai.
Karakoram.
And so either we are too diaspora or we are validating each other. In both cases, I think we are in a bad situation.
A new controversy has just entered.
इसको क्लिप काटना. हाँ, इस पे वोट्स लेना. काराकोरम होता है या कराकोरम होता है.
Yeah, how do you say it and why are you wrong? अच्छा, shit. Okay, बहुत मुझे आपने तशवीश में डाल दिया. चलें, but I was thinking of going तारीफ complaint, but let's do तारीफ. This is not really a complaint, the Shae Gill thing, but let's sort of go to also a sort of not really complaint and then we'll make a तारीफ sandwich. The Ali Sethi song. This also is आज के ज़माने में गाना है. 10-15 साल पहले ये गाना आता, it would not have been out of place. And
you think so?
Like this sounds so much like British Desi music from the early 2010s or late 2000s. In the production is much cleaner because obviously technology बहुत आगे चली गई है. But the vibe is exactly that. And then is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? Is there even like a good or bad that should be applied? वो वाली सोच में मैं चला गया. But how do you feel about this song? Is Ali Sethi the person singing in English at the start? I don't know if you
I don't know.
remember.
I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure whether it's him. I like it. I mean, I think good for him.
Yeah. Yeah.
It just not be stuck in a Pasudi mold.
Yeah.
Right? Like, good for him. This is the very Atif Aslam of him to have a hit song and then do something totally different. So good for him.
Yeah.
You said Buddha Bar to me in our private chat before that this reminds you of Buddha Bar. My only recollection of Buddha Bar is my mamu used to come in from abroad and वो Buddha Bar CDs लेते थे Shazam DVD store से, and so I heard some of them, which is how I was introduced to some of this British stuff, and so that seemed more almost more clubby to me than this. Like this is clubby ghazal, so it fits in a kind of broad sense. But I think that he's doing clubby ghazal also fits his overarching idea that ghazal is a young person genre, that he is going to make a young person genre, that he will have young people dancing to old ghazals, and that is his mission almost, and he's living up to it. So I think you have to kind of laud him for that.
Yeah, it really ties into what you were saying about when you saw him live, and it was performance का क्या setup था based on like the songs and how they were placed and what he was doing with what seemed to be his intention.
Yeah, I think ये समझना भी ज़रूरी है कि उसका that is his main audience now. That him performing to audiences in like New York, right, or big cities in the US or Canada, with half Indian, half Pakistani populations plus other people who are listening here, right, like in a concert venue here, expecting to go in and dance. I think that's kind of his main feedback mechanism. So knowing that this music is for that purpose, in a way, and then he does other songs that are like supposed to be blasted on Pakistani radios.
Sure.
Like maybe it's good to think of them as two separate things.
Because again, it's easy to disregard the business side of music if you're just a consumer, but if you're a artist, so then that's like that's your job. Do you have to consider all these sort of nitty-gritty kind of things के audience कहाँ है, that we mentioned in like 2 songs ago, कहाँ के लोग सुनेंगे, and then can we tailor it to that experience. So and that doesn't mean कि बस आप corporate हो गए and you lost all your artistic integrity as बचपन में हमारे rock stars कहा करते थे. It doesn't necessarily mean that is correct. But
I also
did
think
like the
कि
song.
हमने ज़्यादा सोच लिया, like we have overthought it compared to the artists in a sense. I mean ये भी हमारी theme है regular, but I feel like the artists go off of the feedback that they are receiving in the immediate. Like वो गाना Instagram पे डालेंगे, उनको feedback मिलेगा, वो अपने collaborators को सुनाएंगे, उनको feedback मिलेगा, या वो जिस audience से play कर रहे हैं उनको feedback मिलेगा. पाकिस्तान में live audiences देती हैं नहीं, right? The most common live audience is school concerts, which is not really like a.
Do they still happen?
अब हो रहे हैं. Like I think they're increasing now than before. तो उधर से आपको creative feedback इतना नहीं मिलता. But for example, these like strong creative circles give each other feedback and they feed off of each other, which is why music from certain creative circles begins to start to look the same because they are pushing each other in particular directions. उनकी influences share हो जाती हैं. So I think taking that into consideration is also useful. So Ali Sethi has come off of a year-long tour where he's been doing this kind of music and people have been responding positively to it. So it only makes sense that he will make more of it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I wonder if it would be better to market this. I mean, you don't necessarily have to push कि भाई पाकिस्तान का music बिल्कुल अलग होता है. Even if it's packaged as like modern South Asian music, so then that immediately your audience explodes because आपके पाकिस्तान के बाहर के भी सारे लोग उसमें involve हो जाते हैं and they feel connected to it, ownership to it. Because musically, though, I think you mentioned a few episodes ago, there are very similar themes across latitudes. So yeah, I liked it. And बुधवार का मैंने उसको कह दिया. Now that you're mentioning, I don't remember a single बुधवार song, but I think एक vibe जो associated है with बुधवार वो मुझे इस गाने में सुनने को मिल रही थी. I think that's why I mentioned it. But चलें. Coming to Amna Riaz, who I kept confusing with Aska, just name wise. I know they're two different people and I know what they look like, what sort of music they do, but now that both their names are close to each other in a playlist, immediately I'm like, wait, wasn't her name Achha hai?
One of my most mortifying Hamnawa moments was sending an article about Abdullah Siddiqui but mistakenly typing in Abdullah Qureshi, who I know are separate people, and I was like, oh no, kya kar diya maine? It is by far my still most embarrassing Hamnawa moment. Much
more, I think, understandable than Amna Riaz versus Aska. The link is extremely tenuous. But Amna Riaz, another thought process I was having now, homework karte hue, was कि भाई our current artists, बहुत सारे लोग, do I feel like they're putting out not enough music as compared to what I would think a full-time artist does. Like Shae Gill is very new. चलो ठीक है. Shae Gill की शायद कोई 8-9 गाने हैं. I went to Ali Sethi 2016 Spotify पे गाने आ रहे हैं Ali Sethi के. We're still here. Your video's frozen. अच्छा, is working again. ठीक है. मेरी आवाज़ तो आ रही है ना?
अब आ रही है. बीच में कट गई थी.
अच्छा. Oh shit. Riverside को भी हमने टेस्ट कर लिया. बाहर का हालात तो ख़राब नहीं हो रहे. अच्छा, तो Ali Sethi के गाने मैंने देखे. 2016 से अब तक he has maybe like 30-ish songs. And I'm like, अच्छा चलो. आमना रियाज को मैंने देखा, उसके भी कोई 7-8 गाने थे. आमना रियाज की प्रोफाइल में her bio is I release one song a year. And I was like, हाँ ये ठीक है फिर. So how do you feel about artist output? Because then you compare it to crazy people like Manu, जिसने एक साल में 800 गाने निकाल लिए. And then, you know, हमारे बचपन में when rock was the thing, हर 2-3 साल बाद एक एल्बम आएगी 10-12 गानों की. तो in terms of output, what do you think is a trend? साल में 1-2 singles? And is that just fine?
I think your initial
तुम्हारी वीडियो
description of it in terms of
what the hell?
Artist.
Hello. Yeah.
I'm here, but I think it's probably my end. लेकिन hopefully ठीक हो जाएगा 1 मिनट में. I think your initial read of it as how full-time are artists is the correct one. Because I think those that are part-time, one, have less time to put out songs. 2, I think that also gives them because they're not doing it full-time, they are not putting out everything they come up with. Right? Because I think there's two elements to it. One, they don't have to. Right? Like they don't have to rely on
it's not their job.
Relevant every time.
Yeah.
The second thing I think is that maybe the fact that they are not full-time has something to do with the kind of confidence level at being able to churn this out immediately. And maybe that also reflects in the type of songs or how often they put out songs. And I think some of the artists that we reference that don't have that much music out, I think only put out the songs that they think are really good.
Right.
They probably have lots of other songs that in their mind are not as high quality. And if they were doing it full time, maybe they put it out as an album. Which is another trend, which is that I think albums are back in a big way.
Yeah.
Hassan Raheem ने album निकाली, फिर उसके बाद EP निकाल दी. अब Abdul Hanan is putting out an EP. Manu तो पता नहीं कितनी एल्बम में निकाल चुका है. मैं तो उसकी गिनती
To be fair, Amna also has an EP out with like 4 or 5 song collection, I think from a couple years ago.
Aqdas Asif put out an EP अभी थोड़े दिन पहले, which we discussed. Ali Sethi की भी EP थी इसमें जो हमने बोले. अंजुम की एल्बम आई थी. So now I think we have to go back to this like mode of sort of album reviews as well. And I think albums are a kind of statement of confidence and a statement of arrival. That this is now
ambition also.
Ambition. It's almost like a portfolio piece. There's a lot more record labels now prowling in Pakistan, and people are being signed on to record deals by international labels. So I think for that sort of signing, an album presents this sort of body of work. That people are looking to for seriousness as an artist. So I think that changes the level of output that you expect. Shae ke case mein, like because her first big song was on coke, I think that changes the trajectory completely versus someone who has to put out 10-15 songs before they get on coke. So wo bhi, I think there's a element to it, but now there's record labels plus all the big shows plus how closely you're associated with an artistic community. जिनको आपका पता है, right? Like maybe, for example, you are helping write songs or a member of like a group of artists who themselves are putting out music and who know you are good, but you haven't put out any of your own music, but आपका फिर भी एक level बनता रहता है. Like for example, if you look at the Towers boys, right? Like really great songwriters. They're part of this strong artistic community. So even if their own songs are not as individually as well known as their other music, I think they have like a level of confidence that they can like, keep hitting, which would be different from someone that is completely on the outside, that starts recording in their bedroom, knows no one, and has to use the songs as a way of like meeting people for the first time.
And I think with Amna Riaz also, the nature of her songs, coming to Amna Riaz then, I would, like if I was to put like a unfamiliar tag on her, I would say sad girl music. You know, they're very like feels wale gaane, emotional type, you know, they don't necessarily, you don't think हाँ जी upbeat गाने इस तरह की. which I went into this song also as well, thinking कि हाँ जी very emotional and feels वाला गाना, and and this song changes. Like the third quarter of this song is like a different experience from what you would think just if you start listening to it. So that box is very restrictive, जिसमें मैंने डाल दिया. But I feel like because perhaps Amna Riaz does not have a group around her that can, कि हाँ जी lyrics का idea यहाँ से, production का idea यहाँ से, because and then in addition perhaps that the songs are so like emotionally resonant perhaps with her own thing, तो वो उसमें तो फिर आप बहुत सारे गाने नहीं निकाल सकते. With the technical and the emotional perhaps connections that I assume exist, you can't be putting out like 5 songs a year, 7 songs a year, because वो फिर उसमें वो authenticity maintain करना शायद मुश्किल हो जाता है, which
maybe.
might be a thing for her.
I met her in person like a week ago.
Right.
You knew about this?
No, but I understand
okay.
that you're in Lahore and she's also from Lahore.
ठीक है. नहीं, मैंने कहा कि you mentioned such familiarity with this event that I was like, I thought I was giving you news. No, I was on the same panel as her for a LUMS orientation, which to me felt like an injustice to her because she was talking about her creative process and I was saying, हाँ रोज उठ के ऑफिस जाते हैं 9 से 5 काम होता है. I don't think the audience necessarily saw a connection. And she is, I think, just so warm and I think so her process feels to be I think that like what she mentioned is that she kind of will like sit on things for a while before she feels that they are right.
Yeah.
And so I think she's getting her work to like hit a particular tone before she puts it out. I don't think she's in a rush to put her music out as much as she is waiting for it to feel correct in the emotion or standard that she wants it to hit. मैं तो सोचा कि मैं also जाके कहूँ कि आमना रियाज आप वैसे तो हमारा जोक है कि आप आ जाएं TPR pod पे, मैं आपको invite कर रहा हूँ. I didn't get around to it. I should have sent her the invitation in person.
If this becomes a clip तो फिर आमना रियाज आप आ जाएं, हम मैं चुप रहूँगा, आप ज़ीरक से बात कर ले बेशक. If my box putting was not appreciated, मैं कुछ नहीं कहूँगा. But
box putting, I have to turn that into an actual term.
Box putting, हाँ. I mean dog fooding तो तुम लोग करते ही हो इस्तेमाल, तो मतलब तुम लोग you people तो box putting भी कर लो. But अच्छा, yeah, I think she उसका भी वही है ना कि I feel like if you have that sort of like super emotional connection with the music that you make, and then you're supposed to make like 10 songs a year or something, right? तो वो कैसे होगा? Then उसके बाद that will perhaps lead people down who rush into it or feel like they have to rush into it. That might lead them down, वो imposter syndrome और इस तरह के issues कि भाई पहले तो मैं गाने इसलिए बनाती थी because they were like things I was feeling. Now I'm doing it for a product, and then वो corporation versus artistic integrity वाली एक अलग facet में बहस आ जाएगी. But हाँ, तो again
इसमें तो और
listening.
elements हैं जो I think
Amna Riaz, if you're listening, and I'm fine with your releasing. Come गाने. Concluding.
हम बुरा नहीं मानेंगे.
हाँ, बिल्कुल.
My thought process was, I think depending on what platform you're trying to optimize on, strategies become different. जैसे अगर आपने YouTube पे relevant रहना है, हर हफ्ते 2 हफ्ते बाद एक गाना निकालना पड़ता है, and then you remain relevant, you keep getting subscribers, that is your pathway up. If you want to take a pathway where you produce like a small amount of high quality music and then get picked up either by label or by like a big corporate show, that's another method of doing it, right? And then there's some networking involved with that, obviously. Okay, you are appealing to a select group of people. There's also this thing where you are just slowly building an audience. And I think Amna Riaz's schedule puts her to lends herself to build this sort of audience, and she has one, like a very strong audience that like knows her, knows her type of music, and I think that gives you also like a really strong and loyal fan following. It's a slower growth process, but in that case, like every time you put out a song, you have those like super fans that keep coming back. And I think there's a challenge for many artists that have a loyal fan base. Like for example, I think Manu faces this challenge, right? Like he has a small, really loyal fan base, perhaps smaller than a bunch of other rappers
Sure,
that are in his peer group. And in a way, he can put out a ton of music to be relevant, or he can continue to like use his loyal fan base and sort of unko aista like, because he has so many sides also, like so many different genres of music that he puts out, he can like play both games or decide to play both games. So I think every artist has to have this self-reflection almost of what game they are attempting to play. And what do they want to play? What do they enjoy? And I think there's a lot of confusion with Pakistani artists in terms of what they should play and what they are good at. Like, I talk to a lot of like indie type singers, and I will say like the game that the rappers are playing is totally different. They are putting out songs that have not that much half-life. You hear them a bunch for a couple of months and then they are gone. Like those songs don't come back very often. Ye sare Karachi rappers, I think, is tarah se kar rahe hain. In which case, the beat doesn't matter that much. The poem matters.
Right.
So if you can write a poem fast, you can use a beat that has been quickly produced, put out the song, thodi si video lagayi, YouTube pe lagaya, subscribers bade, move on to the next song, 2-3 hafte baad, and keep doing that. That is a very different game than if you are, you know, for example, producing like Jimmy Khan type music, jo is playlist mein ek aur gaana hai, which is because Jimmy Khan can't produce that kind of music like once every 2 weeks. नहीं हो सकता. Band बजाता है उसके साथ, उसको record करता है, उसकी video बनाता है. It's got to put, the music is put together in a much more almost constructed way in these quick hip hop beats. तो वो एक different ball game है. तो आपको पता है कि हम ये game खेल रहे हैं या वो game खेल रहे हैं, तो उसके हिसाब से आपका change हो जाता है. And I think many artists have not yet thought of their distribution as like a core business strategy. Which is perhaps something that the industry can be pushed towards doing. Where artists themselves are, okay, what is my business plan here? What is my game?
That's interesting. And I wonder who could be in a position to, you know, because वो वाली बात है ना, career counselor बचपन में हमारे शायद मुश्किल ही मिलते थे. And if so many people are making music, and if so many people even are online, how many of them have reliable sources of information that can serve as guides? You know, आगे जाके everything becomes specialized and everybody's different and सब कुछ. But you know, I'm sure there's like a few base steps and decisions to make and things to think about that could be available to people on a easily accessible basis. अब मुझे नहीं पता कि वो कैसे मिलते होंगे अब. But yeah.
No, I think there's no kind of support center like this. The only support center people have is like their producer or their friends who are also making music, right? Usme I think जो problem हो जाता है ना वो ये कि you look at your social group as your professional peer group, which in the case of music is not true. Because depending on how many listeners you have or depending on what kind of music you're making, your social group strategy should not be the strategy that you are following. It should in fact be either something independent or something matching with your actual professional peer group. Which I think is perhaps missing from the Pakistani scene. And I think it requires like a level of sort of confidence from the artists to have in their own strategy and their own kind of sense of the way they are doing things. Of course, it's easy to say, like apni like distribution strategy mein confidence rakhein, do what you want, like don't worry about what your peers are doing. And that confidence also comes from a level of like security, right? Financially, professionally, which our industry does not really have. So I think that plays into it. So as more people get more and more financially secure, I think hopefully that gives them a chance to try different things. Like I keep mentioning Atif because Atif is my standard bearer for someone that like owns his process completely, right? Doesn't do things he doesn't want to do, has confidence in his schedule. Atif to nahi nikalta har mahine gana.
But Atif also is like at so high up the mountaintop ke Atif wali approach pata nahi bechare, you know, even Amna Riaz, who's not unknown by any means, you know, I don't know, she can, but वो एक मैं सोच रहा था आग टीवी अगर होता ना तो आग टीवी पे एक शो आ सकता था कि you know, how to be a musician, full-time musician, part-time musician, master class एक वो निकाल लेते. But yeah, remember when they used to have remember when they used to have they used to have shows about like music theory and music knowledge, and
really
Farhad Humayun was like teaching people कि अच्छा ये drum techniques ही होती हैं, like a whole show on like mainstream TV, and I was quite surprised कि अच्छा यार चलो खैर अब शायद YouTube पे आ जाए. तो
हाँ आई थिंक यूट्यूब ने बिल्कुल ही डिस्ट्रॉय कर दिया ना वो मॉडल. पाकिस्तान टीवी पे बहुत कम इस वक्त.
पाकिस्तान टीवी भी अब यूट्यूब पे आता है तो या आई गेस. बट खैर these were my 4 highlights in terms of subject matter discussion. Apart from these, any things you want to mention from this playlist?
I think I mentioned Jimmy's song, which I think is really great. There's a Javed Bashir song, which I think is also really good. And also
I was very surprised by
interesting.
Javed Bashir song to the extent where I was like मुझे समझ नहीं आ रहा कि मैं इसके बारे में अभी क्या बात करूँ. I need to listen to it like a lot more times. तो मैंने mention नहीं किया. हाँ.
No, it's a really good
Javed
mix.
Bashir song.
And I think वो Hasan Raheem की album जो आई है, that's like I think worth talking about. I don't know if I have too many thoughts or not enough thoughts on that album, which is why I haven't written about it.
Right.
So it's sort of always like with someone of that stature, like going back and listening to it is probably worth it. So there's a lot of interesting things, and I think some of this stuff will make it into next month's playlist also.
Yeah, there's another Oscar song in this album, and one song that I refuse to listen to, and इसमें मेरी अंकलनेस निकल आई. इन आँखों की मस्ती में. As soon as that song started, I was like, no, I refuse. And बहुत मैंने एनालाइज करने की कोशिश की कि इतना रिएक्शन क्यों आ रहा है. I don't care about the original song, but I have heard the original song in periphery so much कि I was like, it is illegal to cover this. और फिर मुझे एहसास हुआ कि यार shit, मैं बहुत अंकल हरकत कर रहा हूँ. Maybe I shouldn't do this. But so far, we are still in uncle mode.
I put it in because I think it was different enough.
Super
and by
different.
different enough artist to warrant attention.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think you will be alone in that response. वो तो वैसे अली सेठी वाला गाना भी, it's
Sure.
I think there's parts of it have been done before.
But Ali Sethi ने अपने आप को इतना प्रूव कर लिया ना कि भाई मैं तो आपको पता है मैं तो
उसको अलावा है.
हाँ embed exactly in that phrasing. Yeah, ठीक है. बस सही. अब अगले एपिसोड में आमना रियाज एंड सून और भी लोग देख लेंगे अब. बट या खैर ठीक है. एनी क्लोजिंग थॉट्स बिफोर वी क्लोज आवर थॉट्स? नहीं.
Good to go.
Great.
Go for
it. Let's see how this recording comes out. Hopefully सब खैरियत होगी. And अगर हो गई तो बस फिर hoping to see many more Pakistani podcasts on Riverside. Because like पैसे तो Zoom जितने ही है, तो अगर क्वालिटी बेहतर है तो फिर why not? Why not make
Yeah,
them? ठीक है जी. We'll stop. You can stop recording now and we'll see you next month or before. देखते हैं. Bye bye.